Despite all the people trying to make it fail, Sonic the Hedgehog is dominating box offices. If you look at its numbers, currently it is at the number one position. It has gone over $200 million, and all of those people that thought they could slow it down, yeah, they forgot what the franchise was all about. So hey there, so today we are returning to that wonderful world of box office, and what we're going to do is simple. We're going to look at how Sonic is performing. We're going to laugh a little bit while we're doing that, and we're going to look at a few of those salty critics trying to take down this movie just because. In order to examine exactly how much Sonic the Hedgehog is dominating, we're going to look at a list that compiles all of this weekend's movies. You have ranking, first and foremost, then the title of the movie, where they earned, and exactly how much of a differential, plus or minus, that is, how many locations or theaters they're playing in, whether or not that's a plus or minus, the average amount that it's earning per theater, the amount that it's made only domestic box office wise, the amount of weeks that it's been out, and who distributed it. The first thing you'll notice here, as we mentioned at the beginning, is this is at number one. And if we look at the other movies that it beat out Call of the Wild when it came in and opened. People were projecting that this would actually topple Sonic the Hedgehog, but still, Sonic managed to outdo it by 500,000. When you look from there, we're not talking about a downhill climb in earnings. We're talking about falling off a cliff, with number three underperforming to the tune of $20 million less than, say, Sonic the Hedgehog, Birds of Prey versus, and it just keeps going down from there. Now, despite this being a 52% drop-off too, this is still an absolute unexpected surprise for the movie. People did not expect it to perform at this level. I mean, it, again, is dominating at the box office via popularity. You can see that in locations. If you look at the amount of theaters here, it opened in more theaters than any other movie. I mean, that is impressive by itself. And unlike the other places here, you have to discount the ones that have only been opened a week. But the other ones, you notice, most of them do not hold at the same level. They have fall off. You see them at a minus. But this is actually being added to other theaters. So you have 4,198 locations with 31 added. And then that average, if you look at the amount of earning, again, for a second week movie, that's dominating as well. Call of the Wild, I mean, it did spectacular for an opening week. But when you look at the other earnings here per theater, Sonic the Hedgehog absolutely dominates every other thing. I mean, the only thing that comes close to location number versus is Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey is operating at $2,000 per. This has 6.6K per. So, I mean, that 3 times plus, yeah, that says a lot. When you look at the domestic box office, too, that was an utter surprise. We'll break that down as well. And this is in 2 weeks. I mean, we are talking about a movie that has blown everyone away, and we're only in week 2. Now, when you look at the numbers in front of you here, one thing to note is international box office. It is not reported all of the finalized numbers yet, so that will be updated soon. But you have the domestic box office. You have international box office leading up to this, and you can see that this is quite the prize as far as popularity is concerned. I mean, remember that this movie, it needed to go and make production budget of $90 million. And of course, you always have to add in what advertisement costs, so you need to go in and double that. So to break even, we're talking about a movie that needs to make $180 million. Another thing that I want to add to the cost, because I'm not sure if this is factored in, is the cost of quote-unquote tweaks when people went back in and corrected things that were complained about. I'm sure you remember that first trailer and all of the controversy. Well, all of that cost $5 million to fix, according to articles out there. And I think that was probably some of the best ad spending you would ever see, because you bring that back to the box office. You tell people, hey, I fixed this for you. And you know what? People feel like they were absolutely listened to, and they will come out in droves to see that. Now, as far as earnings go with this, we will talk about popularity, or the entire number, and we'll talk about profit or what you take home with this. So we're talking popularity, or the entire number. Domestic box office includes $106,601,671. Now, the international box office, we know that this has increased, but up to the time of this reporting, we are at $42,945,619 for a worldwide total. Again, we know this is already over 200 now, but at that time of our $149,547,290. Now, as far as the domestic box office trending here, you're going to have a few things that you need to take into account. Number one, you have to take into account the popularity, how well this performed at the beginning or onset, and the fact that really, if it could keep those numbers, I would have been utterly surprised. Even at a 50% drop-off after everything comes in, you see how this thing is performing. It is looking at one of these high trending flows, and even with the high trending flow, this is performing well into average plus. I mean, right now, if we're looking at other movies that have been comparable to this, you have a flow of the highest would be around $123,883,000, lowest at around $93 million. This comfortably sets at $106 million. Also, something to note here is the damage that reviewers tried to do when you're talking about critics. We'll look at that in a minute, but this is where all of the reviews come in, and it does take a little bit of steam out of it. Even though you think they may not be able to hurt it, they can hurt it to people, to quote-unquote normies that have never heard about this and are just wondering what kind of movie to look at. Now, another thing to take into account with this movie, and also the would have been, could have been, should have been, is the absence of China, because this movie would have performed and performed stellarly in that market. Even without the Chinese market, though, I mean, up to date, again, remember, we have add-ons for this, but you see Mexico bringing in about $7 million. You saw the UK bringing in over $6 million. And when you look at this stair-stepping here, you have a lot of places accounting for the popularity of the movie, more so than you would expect, especially when you compare to how many territories, how many theaters they have open. You're talking about numbers that we're seeing with low amounts of theaters that are reporting in. We don't have the number of Mexican theaters we actually see reported, but the places that are reporting, making millions, they're doing this with 300 to 400 theaters. So that says that this is absolutely performing stellarly abroad. Now, when it comes to the profits or how much someone is going to make off of this movie, you have to take into account a couple of things. Number one, we don't know how much their deal is for this movie, but the upper echelon of earnings in the domestic box office is 65%. So if we take the $106,601,671, we figure up 65% of that. What you're talking about so far, again, in 2 weeks, is $69,291,086 and change. Almost $70 million take home in that. I mean, that is totally insane. Now, when it comes to an international market, you have a lower amount that you're given. I mean, you have different territories that report in, but your average that you get is around 45%. So if we figure in the numbers that were told to us at a $42,945,619 at that 45%, what you have is $19,325,528. And that, again, that's with that earnings level. We figure, with the numbers that we're seeing, it breaking 200 million, that you're probably looking at an additional 20 million added onto this. But still, these are the numbers we have for now. Now, the total that gives us for, again, 2 weeks, and that probably has another 20 million added to it, is $88,616,614 and change. And remember, on top of this, even when the movie closes out, we'll probably have another 100 million when it comes to, say, Blu-ray and DVD sales alone. And with that, I mean, you have a different percentage, but still, you're talking about a movie that's going to make bank. Now, that's exciting success wasn't for a lack of critics trying to damage this, trying to tell you what they think and put this movie in its place, as you can see from the scores here. We're not going to go through an individual breakdown. Don't want to listen to what these folks say there, but just compare these numbers. 63%, and you know what kind of current year blather you see in that, versus 94% from audiences, and that had stayed there, 94, 95% all the way through. I mean, that should tell Hollywood something. You go out, you actually listen to audiences for a change, you give them the movie they want and ignore critics, and you know what? You might just have a gold mine on your hands. I don't know, though. I'm just some lowly guy out here that goes out, listens to audiences, because I, too, am part of it. But anyway, you tell me what you think. Now, very briefly, I want to say this, too. I appreciate you showing up. You know, I always like to end saying that because not enough people do. Whether that's companies like you see out there, you know, putting out movies, YouTubers, whatever. People should thank you for doing that. Your time is valuable. I don't want to monopolize it either. I mean, if you like this channel, sub to it, share videos. But you just being here, regardless, that matters. So thank you. I appreciate you. We'll do this again soon. Thanks.